The rays of the morning sun began peeking over the horizon, bathing the city of Bethlehem in a warm golden glow. The narrow cobblestone streets slowly came to life as shop owners opened their shutters and set out their wares. The tantalizing aromas of freshly baked manaish and cardamom coffee mingled in the air. Ayesha stepped out into the already bustling street, adjusting the dupatta of her rose-printed kurta that offset her jeans. She took a deep breath and smiled, taking in the sights and sounds that were now familiar. Armed with her camera bag and a large bottle of water, she set off eagerly towards the Church of the Nativity. She hummed to herself, replaying the videos from yesterday and making mental notes for shots to capture today. As Ayesha wove through the crowded market, Joseph was just stepping out of his hotel. Dressed in his usual formal attire, a slate grey suit and purple tie, he cut a striking figure among the locals, dressed mostly in casual t-shirts and jeans. He moved with purpose, but his dark eyes had a thoughtful, introspective look. His meeting with the Elta Systems team had concluded yesterday evening, and he had a free weekend before his return flight to India. He decided to make one last visit to the Church of the Nativity, hoping to sit in contemplative silence within its ancient walls. Ayesha bounded up the steps of the church, the beads on her mojris clicking together, merrily in rhythm with her footsteps. She paused for a moment to appreciate the imposing facade before entering the dimly lit interior. Immediately she raised her camera and began filming, remarking on the ornate columns and elaborately carved doorways. Her delighted smile was visible even through the viewfinder. She approached a bronze sculpture of St. Jerome and zoomed in on the intricate details. Meanwhile, Joseph entered the church through a side door, dabbing his fingers into the holy water and crossing himself. He chose a pew in the back corner and knelt down, bowing his head reverentially. His hands clasped the worn wooden bench as he prayed in silence, his eyes closed and expression serene. As Ayesha explored the many chapels and ornate corners of the church, her lively commentary and frequent laughter attracted the attention of several other visitors. She chatted happily with a family from Australia, exchanging thoughts on their experiences in Bethlehem. Her friendly and talkative nature shone through as she engaged warmly with all who crossed her path. In contrast, Joseph sat alone with his thoughts, occasionally rising to examine a painting or mosaic that caught his contemplative eye. He studied the soaring arches and intricate stonework, considering the countless hands that had crafted them hundreds of years prior. Sunbeams streamed through high clear-story windows as he observed parishioners and clergy going through their daily rituals. Ayesha's camera roamed over the stunning iconography and architectural details. Through her lens, worn stone came alive, and community rituals took on poignant beauty. She paused before an iron gate to film the delicate votive lights casting a soft glow in an antechapelle. Just then, her gaze landed on a striking figure across the way, standing utterly still with his eyes closed. Drawn to this solitary man, Ayesha shifted her camera's focus. Her finger hesitated over the record button as she debated whether to capture this private moment. But not wanting to intrude, she lowered the camera and simply watched him for a few stolen seconds. What brought him here alone this morning, she wondered. Oblivious to Ayesha's presence, Joseph stood steeped in his reflections until a scuffling sound made him open his eyes. To his astonishment, he saw a bubbly girl peering at him from across the vestibule. She seemed to glow from within, her dimple flashing as she gave a little wave. Disoriented, yet intrigued, Joseph blinked at this surprising apparition. Ayesha took Joseph's bewildered expression as permission to approach. "Hello," she said brightly. "I was just filming but got distracted by these prayer candles. You like coming here too?" Yes," Joseph replied politely. "Good morning to you as well. I apologize. I didn't mean to stare. You took me by surprise." Always courteous, he extended his hand. "I don't think we were ever properly introduced. I'm Joseph D'Souza." "So lovely meeting you, Joseph. What a nice name. I'm Ayesha Al-Hashim." She smiled, noting how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he offered that diffident little smile. They both turned to look with admiration at their medieval surroundings. Joseph spoke first, gesturing around them. "Remarkable to think this church has stood nearly unchanged for over 1,000 years. One can sense the devotion poured into every stone. Ayesha nodded enthusiastically. It almost transports you back in time. I could imagine myself as a historic pilgrim wandering these same aisles. She suddenly had an idea. Actually, would you like to see some of the video footage I've filmed? Without waiting for an answer, she swung her camera bag around. Certainly, I'd be very interested, said Joseph, peering over with curiosity as she pulled up a video on her camera's display screen. He was impressed by the angles she had captured, giving prominence to often overlooked details. You have a wonderful eye. This is footage any museum would be proud to have in their archives. Ayesha beamed at the praise. She explained a bit about her vlogging channel and love for spotlighting cultural heritage. Joseph listened intently, admiring her articulateness. What brought you here alone this morning? She asked. Were you praying? Joseph rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I simply wish to spend one last peaceful hour in such a sacred space before returning home. I fly back to Bangalore post this weekend. Oh, how nice! What a coincidence, I live in Mumbai, exclaimed Ayesha. Impulsively she added, why don't we take a little walk together? I'd love to hear your impressions of Bethlehem since I'm always collecting stories for my vlog. Joseph looked mildly surprised by the invitation from this unconventional girl, but found himself acquiescing. Together they began a slow circuit of the church perimeter, pausing now and then to examine various artworks. Their conversation flowed surprisingly easily, as two strangers often brought together only briefly by fate. Laughing at Joseph's account of the enthusiastic children who had pelted him with questions in the park, Ayesha said, kids here have no boundaries, but I just adore their cheeky spirit. She told him about the little boy in the market who had boldly examined her camera. As they talked, Ayesha was struck by Joseph's old-world gallantry in inquiring politely about her family and studies. She in turn asked eager questions about his work, admiring his globe-trotting career. Yet she sensed melancholy behind his gracious facade. The contrast between his professional mien and the vulnerability she had witnessed during his prayer was compelling. When they stopped before a painting of the Holy Family in traditional Palestinian dress, Joseph pointed out symbolic elements of the composition. See here, the red gown likely represents potential martyrdom during times when Christians were persecuted. Impressed by his knowledge, Ayesha said, you certainly know the history. She proceeded to rattle off several factoids herself, having done extensive reading about the church. Joseph listened attentively, clearly enjoying this vivacious girl's commentary, despite her predilection for non-stop chatter. They had reached the area with the gilded iconostases when their eyes met in a sudden frisson of connection. Time seemed to pause. Just as quickly, Ayesha glanced away, uncharacteristically flustered. In that charged moment, she could swear she glimpsed the soul of this man, who seemed so self-contained. Trying to regain her equilibrium, she gestured vaguely with her camera. I don't suppose I could convince you to let me interview you. It's for my Bethlehem vlog. Joseph looked taken aback for an instant. He had never enjoyed exposure on film and felt he had revealed enough candor already. But something about this charming girl made him feel off-kilter in an intriguing way. Deciding a brief interview would not hurt, he shrugged and said with a wry smile, I am at your disposal. Ayesha gave a little skip, causing her pale anklets to jingle brightly. She quickly led Joseph over to a stained glass window, where golden light filtered in prettily. As she set up her camera on the tripod, she gave him a reassuring look. Don't be nervous. I'll just ask a few fun questions about your time here. Be as honest as you want. Squinting a little in the glare of her camera light, Joseph collected himself and assumes his professional persona. But once Ayesha began asking casual questions in her bubbly way, he felt himself relaxing. Chuckling at a recollection of the exuberant children kicking their football, he said, I confess I struggled quite a bit to understand the rapid Arabic flying about, but the universal language of smiles bridged all gaps. Ayesha grinned delightedly at Joseph's disclosure, pleased at glimpses of the man behind the sober veneer. Their banter flowed effortlessly as old friends. When at last she concluded the interview, she held out her hand. I can't thank you enough, Joseph. I know these videos will resonate with viewers. As he shook her slender hand, Joseph wondered if he should invite Ayesha for coffee or a stroll around the old city before he departed. but hesitating too long, he missed the opening. "Well, I suppose I should be off to finalize my travel arrangements," he said regretfully. "But it was a genuine pleasure. I wish you the very best with your vlog channel. Perhaps our paths will cross again." While Joseph deliberated internally, Ayesha happily pulled up her contacts and requested to add him. "We must stay in touch now that I know you also live in India. Maybe I'll come give a talk at your office when I'm traveling for my vlogs. Safe travels, Joseph." After another slightly awkward handshake, they walked towards the church doors. Both turned simultaneously for a last lingering glance before going their separate ways, she off to film more footage around Manja Square, and he to hail a taxi to the hotel. Ayesha strolled towards the market, smiling secretly to herself as she replayed their encounter in her mind. She decided she would dedicate this vlog video to that intriguing man named Joseph, who carried himself like a stoic professional, but whose eyes brimmed with hidden depths. Meanwhile, Joseph settled into the taxi bound for his room, glancing down at the new contact glowing from his phone screen. Unaccountably, he felt lighter, as though already missing that exuberant girl's laughter echoing under the vaulted ceilings of the ancient church.